you think of the perfect fighter, you picture a muscle-bound warrior who honed his body to peak performance. It's safe to say these fighters didn't get the memo. MMA's seen a number of portly figures break logic to secure championships and high-profile wins, proving bigger is better, even if it's not the way you expect. Welcome to the INC, and these are 5 of MMA's greatest fat guy moments. Daniel Cormier defied the bulk throughout his MMA career. Cormier entered the scene as an unbeaten heavyweight in Strikeforce, where despite his stocky build, he quickly emerged as one of the division's most dangerous fighters, before moving down to 205, where he secured the UFC light heavyweight title. In 2018, Cormier moved back to heavyweight to face longtime champion Stipe Miocic, aiming to become only the second man to hold titles in 2 divisions simultaneously. Cormier's size disadvantage was quickly evident, as Miocic scored an early takedown before troubling his rotund opponent with a series of 1-2 exchanges. Cormier, meanwhile, spent most of the fight attempting to coax Miocic into a clinch, and in the final stages of the round, the champion took the bait.
And then he clinches. Exactly what you gotta do. He got it done!
Cormier finished the fight with an elbow 4 minutes into the first round, becoming only the second man to finish Miocic as well as the second oldest man to win a UFC title. Cormier secured a one-sided win over Derek Lewis at UFC 230 before losing to Stipe in a rematch. A trilogy fight between the two has been penciled for later this year. It's hard to include a list of MMA fat guys without mentioning Roy Nelson. Big Country was already an established heavyweight on the regional scene, facing the likes of Andrei Arlovsky and Jeff Monson, as well as being a jiu-jitsu black belt under Renzo Gracie. But his slobbish and less refined physique meant many didn't take him as seriously as you'd expect. In 2009, Nelson competed in the all-heavyweight season of The Ultimate Fighter, where despite being a former IFL champion, was dismissed as an also-ran by the majority of fans. Nelson proved his doubters wrong in the biggest way possible, dominating Kimbo Slice in the most-watched episode in Tough history, before further wins over Justin Wren and James McSweeney. In the final, Nelson took on podcaster and stand-up comedian Brendan Schaub. Nelson started on the front foot by scoring an early takedown, only for Schaub to return to his feet and target Nelson's abdomen. Not that it did much good.
Brendan going to the body. I don't know if Roy even feels those.
Nelson responded immediately, catching Schaub with a big right hand and becoming one of the most unlikely winners in the show's history. Nelson would add further scalps during his UFC tenure, including wins over Mirko Cro Cop, Czech Congo, and Antonio Nogueira, before leaving the company for Bellator in 2017. In 2004, Wanderlei Silva was one of the most feared men in MMA. During his spell with Pride, Silva amassed a 19-fight unbeaten streak against the sport's all-time greats, including wins over Dan Henderson and Rampage Jackson, and was widely considered the best 205 fighter in the world. At Pride Shockwave, Silva entered the company's open-weight Grand Prix, where he was expected to make easy work of MMA rookie Mark Hunt. Hunt was competing in only his 3rd pro fight after transitioning from K1 kickboxing, and took the fight on 2 days' notice as a late replacement for Kazushi Sakuraba. Hunt wasn't intimidated by the axe murderer, standing toe-to-toe with the Brazilian's trademark flurries before dropping the Brazilian in the middle of the first round. Hunt was soon using his size and weight to his advantage, although not in the way you'd expect.
Oh my gosh! The atomic butt drop!
Even though Silva began to neutralize the fight on the ground, Hunt managed to hold on for a split decision and secure one of the biggest upsets in Pride's history.
Hunto!
Oh my gosh!
Has just defeated Wanderlei Silva!
Wow!
Silva has just tasted defeat for the very first time in Pride Fighting Championships!
Silva was never the same after the fight, losing his middleweight streak to Ricardo Arona before knockout losses to Mirko Cro Cop and Dan Henderson, while Hunt would enjoy a 16-year career and become one of the sport's most popular heavyweights. Ben Rothwell is one of the scariest men in MMA. Not entirely for his fighting skills. Rothwell was a 36-fight veteran by the time he reached the UFC. competing most notably for the International Fight League, where he was unbeaten in his 9 fights with the promotion. Rothwell traded wins and losses throughout the early years of his UFC tenure, so a match with former Strikeforce champion Alistair Overeem was only going to end one way. Overeem peppered Rothwell with knees and body shots through the first minute, before Rothwell turned the tide with an uppercut that briefly stunned the Pride veteran. Another good shot would be enough to finish the notoriously glass-jawed Overeem, and at 2:13 of the first round, Big Ben struck midnight.
Nice left hand, but down goes Overeem. Oh, this one's gonna end. Ben Rothwell has done it. Jaws dropped throughout this arena.
They would be after seeing those dance moves. Rothwell proved the Overeem win wasn't a fluke, beating Matt Mitrione at Fight Night New Orleans before becoming the first man to submit former champion Josh Barnett, and by 2016 had worked his way to the UFC heavyweight top 5. Rothwell recently scored his first win in 3 years with a controversial knockout of Stefan Struve, and currently holds a record of 37 wins and 12 losses. Mike Russo's flabby build didn't stop him from pulling one of MMA's greatest comebacks. A former state wrestling champion, Russo had spent a decade competing in regional promotions in his home state of Illinois before earning a UFC call in 2009 off the back of an 11-1 record. Despite his achievements, Russo was a sizable underdog when he took on heavyweight prospect Todd Duffy, who entered the fight off of a 7-second knockout in his UFC debut 9 months earlier. Russo knew he needed a master plan if he wished to upset Duffy. Unfortunately, he chose the Homer Simpson strategy.
What you're gonna do is stand there while your opponent gets exhausted from overpunching.
Then I can just push him over.
That's right, and if the ref's not looking, you can kick him a couple of times.
Duffy dominated the fight from the start, landing several heavy blows on the ponderous Russo, who struggled to mount any kind of meaningful offense. Russo's chin managed to hold into the final round, and with Duffy visibly slowing from his barrage of punches, the former wrestling standout put his plan into motion.
Okay, Homer, he's tired. Now's your chance. Nudge him.
Russo, he got caught! Russo has knocked out Unbelievable!
Russo scored the upset 2 minutes into the third round, but it remains a mystery how he was never reprimanded for the brutal follow-up shot. Russo never capitalized on his newfound stardom, as losses to Fabrizio Verdum and Sean Jordan saw him axe from the UFC with a 15-3 record. And now, time for a few honorable mentions. Quentin Jackson tried to channel Andy Ruiz for his match with Fedor Emelianenko. Unfortunately, he ended up more like Bob Sapp.
Big shot. And it is over. Fedor Emelianenko knocks out Quentin Rampage Jackson.
Ario Gila not only looks like Kung Fu Panda, he fights like him too. Emmanuel Yarbrough held just 1 win in his MMA career, and got it in the most fat guy way possible. This is the INC. Support the channel on Patreon.